This video is the first in a multi-part series I'm making on Tom Woods. I don't hate Tom. I actually love Tom, but I wish he'd just uncuck. I'm going to play a clip from the Tom Woods show to give some context.
One thing that sometimes holds people from the right back from libertarianism is the whole issue of immigration. How would you talk to someone on the right about that? About how, and you know, I personally, I don't see a role. I don't see how you can enforce immigration without the NAP, without breaking the NAP. But at the same time, I think our government does a lot of things to encourage immigration and things like that. That's a problem. And I know there's libertarians are all over the place on this one, but what would you say to someone who says, "Hey, I'll be a libertarian, but we gotta keep people out and build the wall and all that"?
Well, first, I would point them to that, as you say, there is a diversity of opinion among libertarians on this subject. The Journal of Libertarian Studies did an issue edited by the great historian Ralph Raico, who was with Cato for a long time, in which he got contributions from people like John Hospers, who was the very first LP candidate, and he was not in favor of open borders. So it's at least debatable among libertarians. And you may, and by the way, there are things debatable among libertarians where I think one side is 100% right, the other side is 100% wrong. But sometimes when somebody I really, really respect and I think is really, really smart and accomplished is 100% in disagreement with me, I hesitate to say, well, they're not libertarians. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean that I don't think I'm right. It's just, let's hash this out more before I condemn you. So first, I would say that we have a difference of opinion. But secondly, the way I would frame it is, at the very least, we can all agree that it shouldn't be subsidized. Yep. So the first thing I would not, and also I would not say, I'm not going to assume that you're a terrible person who hates people because of your concern about immigration. That's what every fashionable blue check mark on Twitter will say to you. Yep. And I would hope libertarians are above that. Yep. I mean, really. Surely we're better than Alyssa Milano, for heaven's sake. Or Ted Danson, or, whatever these airheads are. Right. Well, we're better than that. Let's not automatically apply to them the same name calling they get from everywhere else. Be respectful toward other people that you disagree with. Would also go a long way. But I would say just quit subsidizing it would go a long way, wouldn't it? I mean, and as you've said, I don't see what would be the problem of saying that you could have an immigration policy where, all right, everybody who comes in, you're welcome to come in, but you don't get any of these benefits. Now, there are some libertarians who wouldn't accept that, which goes to show they're more for immigration as a general principle than they are for libertarianism as a philosophy.
Yep.
From this interview, it would seem that Tom is advocating for open borders, which would surprise me, since his roots were in paleo-conservatism, before he switched to paleo-libertarianism. And then, under the guidance of Lew Rockwell, he dropped the paleo, and now it's just libertarian. I just find it hard to believe that anybody who identified with the term paleo would ever go open borders. Tom Woods has been very enthusiastic about Jacob Hornberger's presidential campaign. Hornberger has repeatedly stated that the most important goal of his campaign is to open the borders to immigration. Here's a couple clips.
I have certain issues that I'm going to concentrate on, and with the aim of them resonating within certain sectors of society. I have no pretensions that seniors are going to vote for me. I'm not going to target seniors with votes because I'm going to be advocating abolishing the whole gamut of welfare state programs, beginning with Social Security and Medicare. That's not going to resonate among seniors. So my top issues are going to be, one, the war on immigrants. I believe this is an evil, immoral, destructive, deadly war that has produced a police state in the American Southwest. I'm going to be arguing to Hispanic Americans that this is no way to go, that the only system that is consistent with religious principles and free market principles is a open border, free trade, open immigration system.
Uno de los temas más importantes en mi campaña va a ser, por supuesto, inmigración.
When planning this blog, I was expecting Hornberger to win the Libertarian Party nomination. But it seems that the Libertarian Party is even more committed to losing than I thought. But I've always been interested in Jacob Hornberger. When we were kids, my brother and I would call him Hannibal the Cannibal, because, you know, he looks a lot like Hannibal Lecter. Hornberger has maintained that a free, anarcho-capitalist world of private property would look a lot like his world of open borders. This is obviously wrong, and Hornberger needs to retract it. Okay. Implicit in a world of private property is private zoning and private roadways. Implicit with a world of private zoning and roadways is that people break up into segregate communities, since zoning would require discrimination according to some criteria. Historically, people have preferred their own culture and have been resistant to ethnic invasion, so the criteria would most likely fit these aims. Now, something silly that right libertarians often say is that they would support open borders if only we'd get rid of the welfare state first. While I do agree that we'd have to get rid of the welfare state before instituting open borders, we'd also have to get rid of a few other state intrusions first. Libertarians take note. We would need to get rid of government intrusions in the areas of roadways and zoning. These government programs have stripped Native peoples of their right to protect themselves from cultural invasion. We'd have to get rid of the state-supported system of mass discrimination against white men. And we'd have to get rid of the state psyop called anti-whiteness. If the term psyop sounds too conspiratorial for you, we can call anti-whiteness a governmental propaganda program. And for my libertarian brethren, we can just call it a state program. An essential requirement for ending governmental anti-whiteness is to end compulsory schooling. White men are massively discriminated against in ways that go way beyond affirmative action, such as anti-discrimination law. To end discrimination against white men, anti-discrimination law has got to go. I will leave a link to Rothbard on the subject below. All that's been done to prevent IQ from being used on a resume has certainly led to discrimination against white men. Also, anti-whiteness encourages discrimination against white men in firms that don't entirely answer to the market. My Filipino auntie was telling me that the hiring director at the large government firm she works at simply won't hire white men. With the current atmosphere of anti-whiteness, anytime you want to please the government, just hire less white men. Do you want a tax law changed? Hire less white men. Do you want to capture a regulator? Hire less white men. The government has spent vast sums of taxpayers' money promoting racism against white people. So the question is why? Kuehnelt-Leddihn answers this question in his book, Leftism. Kuehnelt-Leddihn pointed out that everything the left does centers on harnessing the inferiority complex as a political force in order to promote the state. Class warfare, gender warfare, race warfare, Exploiting the inferiority complex is the game plan. Playing around with the inferiority complex is very dangerous, since it often leads to cruelty. This cruelty is expressed when you hear people say, "I don't feel sorry for that white woman living under the bridge. She's white. She had everything given to her, and yet she screwed it all up. She has no excuse." The viciousness of the attacks on elderly white people in nursing homes is evidence of this psychology, as well as the gruesomeness of the attacks on white South Africans. So before I get in trouble with the censors, when I talk about the inferiority complex, I'm talking about a psychological state familiar to all of us. I'm not calling anyone inferior. Feelings of inferiority, jealousy, fear are emotions that we've all felt at some point. The state exploits the feelings of inferiority of one group towards another to encourage a sense of injustice. The group that feels it has been wronged will then call upon the state to rectify the perceived wrongs. This could come in the form of policies that were designed to do nothing more than punish the perceived oppressor. But most likely it entails policies of wealth redistribution to the victim group. The state could not exist without a scapegoat to blame its perpetual failures on. An important part of the mechanics of this is that it provides that scapegoat. In today's world, that scapegoat is the white male. Of course, this whole process requires a substantial amount of white people themselves to adopt the worldview of anti-whiteness. This is necessary so that the state can capture the majority. Now just stay still. Stop. Stop. My views may seem peculiar since I approach anti-whiteness entirely from a libertarian point of view. Someone recently told me that I'm not going to have any allies among the ranks of my fellow libertarians. But that's not true. Millions of libertarians think just like me. It's just that the intellectual leadership of the Paleo-Rothbardians have decided that cuckery was the best way to sell our position. The only difference between me and Tom is that I'm not willing to fall in line with Lew Rockwell's disaster. An important feature of this state psyop called anti-whiteness is that you're vilified as a racist if you stand up to this government program. No, you're not a racist. In the title, I used the term ethnic cleanser. What is ethnic cleansing? Ethnic cleansing is a form of state planning. Ethnic cleansing is when the state uses its monopolies to alter the ethnic demographic of a population for some end. What is it? Is it the spider? The state planner will look over a community that had been 90% white for 300 years and say, "That's not right, we need to get that down to 60%. Then he'll use all the governmental tools at his disposal to accomplish this. Non-whites usually support this since they're taught, among other things, that they need to support this as a means of self-defense against evil whites. State-supported anti-whiteness has led to mass violent crimes against whites, but violence is just the tip of the iceberg, since violence is just one type of abuse. A few years ago, my grandpa had heart surgery that he couldn't recover from, and he eventually died a few days later. On his hospital bed, he asked his Chinese nurse where she was from. She immediately got pissed off and straight up said that she didn't put up with racism from white people. Older white folks used to see inquiring about such things as where you're from as a way to be polite, since it showed interest in someone's culture. But that stupid bitch put my grandpa on a guilt trip right before he died. Later that same day, I went down to the cafeteria with my grandma, and we happened to have a cashier who was a Filipino. And me being half Filipino, I asked her if she was Filipino, and she also got pissed off. Want me to hold you like a baby? Will that calm you down? Let me get you up here. You gonna calm down now? You gonna calm down? Are you gonna calm down? Whoa, how'd your foot even get there? Are you gonna calm down now? Okay. You gonna calm down? Are you gonna get sleepy and stop annoying me? With all the hatred against whites, I still think it would be simplistic to say that most non-whites hate white people. I'd say that non-whites actually do like white people. It's just that the relationship they desire with whites is toxic. He's sleeping. You're disgusting! It starts in early education with racially integrated classrooms. What they do is offer non-white kids the status of being a hero. They're part of a hero class that have long suffered and persevered against oppression from white men. White females are offered a similar hero standing, with the only requirement being that they honor the victims of past oppression. Young white males, being a part of a villain class, are offered an opportunity to be a hero, albeit a lesser one, if he's willing to spit on the graves of his white male forebears. Don't you dare. Quit chewing on my shirt. This is the aspect of anti-whiteness that bothers me the most. Between the ethnic cleansing, violent crime, and job discrimination, I find the requirement of white men having to disavow their ancestry the most vile. Children often desire to get along in these socially integrated environments. So the social pressure on young white males to disavow their ancestors is incredible. Non-whites, as well as white females, will only accept him if he does this. And if he doesn't, he's kicked out as an outcast. This is the same method they use on adults. It's actually the reason why older whites are vilified. The state tells white people, "You're not so bad, but your grandparents were." The state tells non-whites, "Your white friends aren't that bad, but their grandparents were." Incidentally, the term boomer is also a part of the psyop, since it turns us against ourselves, and the word should be avoided. Anyways, in part 2, I'm going to prove to you that Tom Woods actually agrees with me. But that's it for now, so I'll talk to you later.